Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the one, the only Law Academy, where the law is not only easier to understand, but we, our better I, managed to keep it super cool. If it's okay with you, why don't we have some fun with one of Congress's favorite enumerated powers, the tax and spending power. You heard me right, the tax and spending power. The takeaway is pretty cut and dry. According to the Supreme Court, Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress a broad power to tax Americans and spend the tax money on federal programs as long as Congress believes the tax and spending is for the benefit of the American people. Let's dive right into a more recent case. You might remember the Affordable Health Care Act. Let's not be coy. You might remember Obamacare. Well, it was challenged as unconstitutional and taken to the Supreme Court. One of the challenges was that it penalized those who failed to buy the new affordable health insurance. The Supreme Court ruled that Congress's passage of Obamacare was completely constitutional, even with the penalty, because the penalty is a tax and Congress has an express or enumerated power to tax. While some conservatives would disagree, Obama and the majority of Congress at that time believed that the penalty or the tax was in the best interest of the American people because so many Americans couldn't afford health care without Congress's new law. Now let's give this some historical context. 1,000,000 years ago, there lived two dudes named James Madison and Alexander Hamilton. You may have heard of these guys before. Well, they basically look like him. Well, Madison thought that Congress's power to tax was limited to the specific legislative topics expressly mentioned in the Constitution. Hamilton was more liberal. He thought that it was okay for Congress to tax and spend for any purpose that served the general welfare of the people, so long as no other constitutional provisions were violated. Basically, my man Madison wanted to limit Congress's power, and Hamilton wasn't having it. In any event, the Supreme Court happens to agree with Hamilton, and it has for a long time. So unless the tax violates another part of the Constitution, another provision, like a tax that discriminates on the basis of sex or race, then the tax and spending power is a go-to argument when you're making the case for the constitutionality of a federal law. Let's knock out another example. Let's say that Congress wants to pay farmers millions of dollars not to farm. That would be spending. And let's also say that attached to that legislation is that Congress is going to get the millions of dollars for the farmers from farming companies that process the goods that farmers grow or raise. That would be taxing. Yeah, I know it sounds a little dicey, but it's part of a new deal, and FDR is sure that this thing will pan out because we have nothing to fear but fear itself and all that good stuff. Well, as you can bet, farming companies facing the tax got on their moral high horse and made 10th Amendment arguments that Congress has no right meddling in their state's private business. Congress, on the other hand, reasoned that it was only getting involved for the good of the American people who deserved to have fair prices for their foods and a stable supply of fruits, veggies, and potato chips. Let's talk about how this works on an actual exam. So you're on the exam. You're scared, you're nervous because the guy next to you is typing faster and you forgot your MacBook Air charger. What are you going to do? First, you're going to stop freaking out. Next, you're going to look for a federal law. You'll know it when you see it because it will end with the word act. A-C-T, act. And based on the fact pattern, you will see that Congress is charging one group, i.e. taxing, and giving the money to another group, i.e. spending. At this point, you've spotted the issue. The tax and spending power. The next thing that you're going to do is echo our friend Hamilton and argue that so long as Congress has good reason to believe that the tax and spending is in the best interest of the general welfare of the nation, then the law is constitutional. Find a few examples of this and keep it pushing. Third, you're going to pretend you're James Madison and make counter-arguments as to why Congress's power should be limited. You're even going to make a 10th Amendment argument that Congress has no business bullying states and interfering with state sovereignty. If you can, go even further and make a crossover counter-argument that Congress's act is unconstitutional because it violates another part or another provision of the Constitution. Maybe it's discriminating based on race or on sex or violating some other constitutional provision. Step 3's counter-arguments are super important. Counter-arguments are how you pick up points on the exam, and the best thing about exams are picking up points. Now, where's my theme music? There it is. Well, that's the tax and spending power. And the moral of the story is that Uncle Sam can tax and spend as long as he says he's doing it for the general welfare of all of his nieces and nephews that are the fabric of this great nation. Dude, the Law Academy is so cool. We are so super cool. I'm just saying. Don't hate.